In a towering glass building that reflected the morning sun over a
Ustawienie
bustling
Harris
city,
mniejsze
a
10
conference
witam
room filled
Państwa.
slowly with people. The polished table stretched long and wide, water pitchers and notepads neatly arranged, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a skyline of ambition. The room was meant to be a place of decisions, where deals were struck and visions were shaped, but on that particular day, something deeper than business was about to take place. At the head of the table sat a woman in her early 30s, her posture straight, her suit crisp, her hands folded to steady the nervous rhythm in her chest. Her name was Emily Carter. She had worked tirelessly for years in a world where she often felt unseen, proving her capability again and again, yet still encountering doubts whispered in corridors and biases carried silently into meetings. Today, she was expected to present an idea that could change the course of the company's future, an idea that had kept her awake through countless nights of research, planning, and quiet hope. Across from her sat a delegation of international investors. Among them was an elder gentleman named Sheikh Omar, dressed in traditional attire, his long white beard framing a face of stern lines and observant eyes. His reputation preceded him: shrewd, cautious, not easily impressed. Many in the room assumed he would not easily accept guidance from someone much younger, let alone from a woman. His presence filled the air with an almost tangible weight, and the other executives, most of them men, watched carefully for his reactions. Emily stood, her hands lightly pressing against the polished wood of the table as she gathered her breath. She began speaking, her voice calm but strong, outlining the vision she had crafted. She spoke not only of profit margins and strategic advantages, but of long-term impact, sustainability, and the human element that often got buried beneath numbers. Her slides highlighted communities that could benefit, employees whose lives would change, and customers who would gain more than just a product. They would gain trust, fairness, and care. At first, the room listened in silence, the kind that can crush or carry a speaker depending on how it's received. Sheikh Omar leaned back, his face unreadable, his hand resting on the table with measured patience. A few of the executives shifted, some skeptical, others intrigued but unwilling to show it openly. Emily kept going, not letting her voice tremble, remembering the late nights she spent imagining this very moment, remembering her grandmother's words: kindness in your work doesn't make you weaker, it makes your work worth doing. When she finished, she looked around. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of the executives cleared his throat and raised a question about risk. Another followed with a concern about cost. Emily addressed each calmly, offering clear reasoning and practical answers. Yet she could feel the weight of Omar's silence pressing on her. It wasn't his questions she feared, it was his lack of them. Finally, he raised his hand slightly, and the room stilled. His voice, deep and deliberate, filled the space. You speak of business with the language of hearts. Do you believe kindness belongs in such matters? Emily inhaled. She knew this was the pivotal moment, the question beneath every doubt she had faced. Yes, she replied, her gaze steady. I believe kindness is not separate from strength. A company that forgets kindness may profit for a season, but it will lose the trust that sustains it. If we want to build something that lasts, it must be built on respect and care, for people, for partners, and for the world we touch. The words hung in the air. A few people shifted again, some surprised, others uncomfortable at the idea of blending business with compassion. But Emily did not waver. Her voice was not demanding, not defensive, simply sincere. Omar's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. In my country, he said slowly, a merchant is judged not only by the weight of his goods, but by the fairness of his hand. I have seen fortunes collapse because men forgot that truth. And I have seen small traders grow into legacies because they remembered it. You remind me of that principle. A quiet murmur swept across the room. One of the other executives looked almost stunned, as if the older man's acknowledgement had shifted the very gravity of the meeting. Emily felt her shoulders ease slightly, though she kept her composure. But Omar was not finished. You are young, he continued, and the world will test you. Many will dismiss your ideas, not because they lack wisdom, but because they do not fit the mold of what power looks like. But wisdom is not measured in age or gender, it is measured in the impact it leaves behind. You spoke with conviction, not arrogance. That is rare. Tell me more about how you intend to ensure kindness does not weaken discipline. Emily's voice steadied further as she answered, describing accountability systems, transparent policies, and ways to integrate compassion without sacrificing responsibility. She painted a picture where kindness strengthened loyalty, where employees felt valued and therefore performed better, where clients trusted long-term relationships rather than quick wins. The more she spoke, the more the room leaned in, drawn not by flash but by authenticity. As the conversation unfolded, the tension that once sat heavy in the room began to shift. Executives who had entered skeptical found themselves nodding unconsciously. The assistant at the far end of the table, who had looked doubtful at the beginning, now scribbled notes eagerly. Even the cynical finance officer, known for dismissing anything idealistic, sat with less resistance, quietly considering possibilities. By the end of the discussion, Sheikh Omar leaned back once more, his hand stroking his beard thoughtfully. I came expecting to hear another plan of profit chasing, he admitted. What I heard instead was a reminder of values we too often forget. Perhaps kindness is not an accessory to business. Perhaps it is the foundation. Those words shifted everything. Agreement followed, and the partnership was approved with conditions that reflected Emily's vision. For the first time, her ideas were not only acknowledged but embraced. She didn't just win a deal, she opened a door that had long been closed. After the meeting, as people left the room, one of the younger associates approached Emily quietly. I didn't think they would listen, he confessed. But you showed me something today. You made me believe kindness actually belongs here. Emily smiled softly. It always belonged here. We just forget sometimes. In the days and weeks that followed, the story of that meeting spread quietly through the company. People began repeating her words, sharing how she had stood firm in kindness without bending into weakness. Small changes began to happen. Managers checked in on their teams more thoughtfully. Decisions weighed not only cost but also consequence. Employees who once felt invisible started finding their voices. Emily herself grew, not only in position but in presence. She understood that leadership was not about commanding a room, but about guiding it towards something better. She also understood that kindness was not just in the grand gestures but in the quiet choices, respecting an opinion, listening with patience, offering credit where it was due. As for Sheikh Omar, he became not only an investor but a mentor. He shared stories from his years of navigating markets, mistakes made, lessons learned. Yet each conversation circled back to a theme: fairness, respect, humanity. The world measures wealth in numbers, he told her once, but true wealth is measured in the lives you touch with decency. Years later, when Emily looked back on that pivotal day, she didn't remember the numbers on her slides or the exact phrasing of her pitch. She remembered the silence that tested her, the question that challenged her, and the choice she made to answer with truth rather than fear. That moment shaped not just her career, but her belief that kindness was never weakness, it was courage in its purest form. And so, the tale of that meeting became more than a corporate anecdote. It became a reminder carried by those who were present, retold in quiet conversations and training sessions, a story that echoed across boardrooms, that kindness, when spoken with conviction, can shift even the hardest hearts and change the course of what people believe is possible. It was proof that kindness doesn't just belong in homes or friendships. It belongs in the places where decisions are made, where power is exercised, and where futures are determined. For kindness, at its core, is not about softness, it is about strength guided by humanity.